Hello, I'm ANEKA from Made to Sew. In this short video, I'm going to be sharing my top 5 tips for fitting a dressmaking pattern to your individual figure. Tip number 1 is that you need to take accurate measurements when you're measuring yourself. You may be measuring yourself, you may have a friend to measure you, but whatever you do, they need to be accurate and in the right place. The key measurements that you'll be taking is the bust, perhaps the high bust, if you may need a small bust adjustment or a full bust adjustment, the waist, the low hip, and the back length. If you don't know where to take these measurements, I recommend that you watch my how to measure video and I'll pop a link to it. When you're taking the measurements, you need to make sure that you aren't breathing in, the measurement isn't too snug, and that it's not too loose. You don't want to be positioning a finger under the tape measure. Tip 2 is that you need to understand ease and the ease that you like in your garments. On your dressmaking pattern, you're going to want to look at the finished garment measurements and compare these to the size that you're planning on choosing. What is the difference? How much ease does the pattern have at the bust, at the waist, at the low hip? You could also compare this to garments in your wardrobe. Of course, if you're working with a dressmaking pattern that is for woven non-stretch material, make sure that you compare it to a garment in your wardrobe that's in a similar fabric, woven and non-stretch. You could measure the garments in your wardrobe at the bust, waist and hip and see how much ease they have. So what is the difference between the garments and your individual measurements? That will give you an idea about the amount of ease that you like in your garments. Do you like your garments to be closer fitted? Do you like them to be looser? And therefore, it may change the size that you want to make in the dressmaking pattern. Tip 3 is that once you've chosen the size of the pattern that you want to work with as a starting point, you need to go through making any adjustments in the following order. The first one is that you want to make any lengthening or shortening adjustments to any of the pattern pieces that need it. You may be making those changes above the bust, above the waist, between the waist and the low hip, or between the low hip and the hem, or in the sleeves, depending on what pattern it is that you're making and your individual measurements and how they compare to the pattern. Once you've made the lengthening and shortening adjustments, the next thing is to make any adjustments that work with the curves of the body. So we're not changing the size along the width of the body at the moment. We're simply working with any key alterations that you know you need to make. This could be a full bust adjustment or a small bust adjustment. I have tutorials on both of these if you want to watch them. It could be that you need to do a full seat adjustment, a round shoulder adjustment, any of the kind of curved adjustments that you need to make for your individual figure, you would do next. Then, finally, you would make any width adjustments to your pattern. So my tip number 4 is that making the width adjustments, you don't need to be one size. You do not need to be the same size through from the bust all the way down to the low hip. You may find, because you have an individual body, that you are a different size at the bust, waist and hip. That is absolutely fine, and you simply need to blend your pattern between those points. Tip number 5 is that I always recommend that you create a sample of the adjustments that you've made on your pattern prior to sewing up the final garment. I would recommend making a sample in calico or muslin material, but again, you can use something that you already have, something that's cheap, something that is woven and doesn't have any stretch if you're working with a woven pattern. If you're working with a stretch pattern, ideally the stretch percentage of your sample fabric needs to be the same as the finished fabric. So those are my top 5 tips for helping you to fit a dressmaking pattern to your individual figure. Thanks for watching.